Greetings, I hope you're as excited as I am for Crusader Kings 3, which is why I'm starting with Dev Diary 1, the Dynasties and Houses. There's a lot to say about this. First, I want to look at the terms, actually. They are defining the terms that influence the gameplay, and we're going to have a short look at the real world, how everything is defined, because there is a lot of things coming. There's a dynasty, there's the house, and all of this connected to the old mechanics of the bloodlines in Crusader Kings 2 as well. So let's have a short look. I made a graphic. So this, as you can see, is basically the circle, the all-encompassing circle is the important family. That was your coat of arms in Crusader Kings 2. So that's basically the bloodline you're in. I mean, you can found a legendary bloodline in Crusader Kings 2, but that has nothing to do with this. Maybe later on, but for example, an example of a bloodline would be Habsburg, right? If you looked at Habsburg, you could see who is in Habsburg in time, yeah, due to their kind of incestuous relationships. So, and there were different houses in that branches of a family. These are not houses from the House of Habsburg, of course, but they're examples of real-life important houses. So a house in the real world is a very important family. Not necessarily a ruling family, but the House of Windsor, the House of London, the House of Wessex, the House of Hanover. These are examples just of what you could call them. And of course, they came to power, and then, as defined in the Cambridge Dictionary, you would have a dynasty. A dynasty is an actual succession of rulers of a country, mostly bound together by family. So part of this thing, part of a bloodline. It could also be part of a tradition, but that's really not that common of a dynasty is really the connection in blood, and that's something that is closely connected to the absolutism, to the belief that this dynasty or that bloodline, that family is also in time chosen to do something later on. And these chosen people are the ones you will represent, while the houses in the actual Crusader Kings 3 game will be parts of that family you have there, that coat of arms, and they will send the members over here to become rulers. And dependent on your political system and dependent on your inheritance rules and laws, one house might become the predominant house, or one house could become a reserve house, or you could specialize one of the houses. And dependent on all of that, of course, if you have different houses, elective monarchies would be much more interesting. You have a dynasty. I mean, the basic thing about the dynasty is, and we're going back to the Dev Diary look now, it's the thing you start with. You can start with a very, very small family, of course, in Crusader Kings 3 as well, and that's going to be interesting as well. And that small is like the base thing. And we're going to look now if you have houses right at the start. I mean, even if you have a very, very tiny family, or as you can see, you have two houses here. So that's something like you have the Godwin dynasty or the Robertine dynasty, and that has two houses. So will the number of houses increase? Will you have one house at the start, and will it branch off as you gain more power, as your family members go into more and more ruling positions? Does that play a role? We're going to look at that. So a dynasty in Crusader Kings 3 will be not a monolithic entity, but a collection of houses that should work together, theoretically, towards bringing renown upon the dynasty. So Then going further down, what is that house? Each dynasty will have a founding house, so it will be the one, usually of the same name as the dynasty, the first house of that dynasty. You can see it progresses. As the game progresses, ruling dynasty members that are distant by blood to the current house head may choose to create a cutted branch, effectively creating a new house under the dynasty, and probably increasing their power that way. Creating that branch makes the character, creating it the house head, with the most powerful house head becoming the dynast. So the next ruler of that special dynasty. And by extension, free from the direct influence of their old house head. So it's an independence movement. There's still a connection of the bloodline, but they are independent in a way, but they are still connected. And how does that influence the game? Becoming a house head, though, requires a lot. You do not stand to inherit your house head's titles. That's the first thing. All of your dynastic ancestors must be dead. Your father can't be alive, for example. And as a reward, you'll get a new coat of arms, mottos, and usually, as with the real houses, inspired by the location in which they are founded, like the House of Hanover, for example. If the ruler of the Gimena dynasty would create a cutted branch in southern France, they might be called the Toulouse Gimenas, and so on. So that's very much bound to the history, which I really like. So what is the house head? What does the house head do? And what is the influence of the new house head or the new house on the dynasty? That's what I'm really looking forward. So it's not just a new family, ruling family, but something that influences the whole dynasty. Within a house, there's always a leader, a house head that wields power over the rest of the members. The house head has the power to legitimize bastards, call house members to war, and demand that they adhere to their faith. So it's a very powerful position. A house should be, or could be, unified in faith as well. It's an entity that is like a bloodline alliance, something that was very difficult to reach in Crusader Kings 2. Usually, you could make an alliance only if it was not a direct competitor. And now you're under the same head, and you're basically not competitors, but you're under that head. So you have probably two ruling entities. Like, first, you are the ruler of some kind of state construct, and then you are the ruler of a family construct, that is the house. And both of these go either hand in hand or against each other. We'll see what becomes of that. A house head also has inherent leverage on whole house members born after they were made head by virtue of getting a hook on them. So a hook, we'll see what that means. So it's coming in another Dev Diary. They also gain passive prestige based upon the number of members in their house, and the house leadership follows the succession of the house head. So if you're the leader of your house, you'll most likely keep that title on succession. So that's something very powerful. And once you lose that, you're maybe in a lot of trouble. The dynasty, on the other hand, so that's something different than the house head, with significantly more power than a house head, with their power encompassing the members of all houses of the entire dynasty. So that's even over that. So he's like the family, like in your big circle, the family leader, the total family leader, not only of that localized house, but of the whole bloodline. The dynasty is always the most powerful house head of a dynasty, with leadership being updated on the death of the old dynast. So you need to be a house head to become the dynast. And if you're the most powerful house head, is that defined probably by the members of the house, you will become the dynast on the death of the old dynast. In addition to everything the house head can do, the dynast can also disinherit and restore inheritance, denounce, forgive members of the dynasty, personally claim titles held by dynasty members, and make dynasty members end wars they have against each other. All of these powers work against every member of the dynasty, not just the house they are a part of. I suspect, or I expect, there can be resistance by the members of the house like it is now in the council. And that is what makes things interesting. The dynasty also gains prestige for every living member of the dynasty. Being the dynasty is very powerful indeed, but you have to carefully weigh the powers against other benefits as they cost renown. So we have the renown mechanic of the old guilds you could join, for example, the wolf warriors for the Vikings. This mechanic seems to be used here as well, probably tuned. So you have renown coming in and you can spend it on these actions. What is renown? It's a resource accumulated by a dynasty used for several things. All renown earned by a dynasty counts towards its level of splendor. Okay, so you will have something like you had with the old dynasty things. You could become legendary or found a legendary bloodline if you made a special event with your guild or your whatever that was you were part of in Crusader Kings 2. And this time this is called the level of splendor. So the dynasty itself also probably has some kind of point score that would make it more powerful than other dynasties maybe. Level of splendor is the outward perception of the dynasty, how well it is perceived in the eyes of the world, and affects the prestige you get on birth. And maybe you can even, as they've planned also with Stellaris in the Federation, and as you've seen in the unlocking trees in the first screenshots of Crusader Kings 3, you have very intricate character customization, and maybe that customization will also go on for the dynasty. Maybe you can give them special traits. So affects the prestige you get on birth, the prestige when marrying into it, the maximum long reign opinion you can get. Having a high level also makes it much easier to arrange marriages, especially with dynasties below your level. Regardless of if renown is spent or not, the level of splendor won't decrease. So you get the renown, that renown counts to the splendor. If you spend your renown, it's still in the splendor count. The higher your dynasty's level of splendor, the more impressive its coat of arms frame will look. Peasant dynasties will start at a negative splendor level, which means that you'll actually lose prestige for marrying them, as it is with the members of the smaller houses or the lowborns today in Crusader Kings 2. Renown itself is the spendable currency, representing the clout your dynasty holds over itself. Its use is twofold. It can be used first for the most powerful dynasty interactions, as we had above, getting claims, disinheriting, etc. And secondly, for unlocking dynasty legacies. Yeah, that's customizing your dynasty as you want it, probably. Let's look at that. The way you get renown encourages you to mimic a playstyle that was common in reality, but that wasn't very practical in Crusader Kings 2, spreading your dynasty far and wide. You will gain renown for every ruler of your dynasty that isn't a subject under another member of your dynasty. So, spreading the dynasty, yeah, that was the pet peeve of the Habsburgs, right? They were the masters of that. Now, if you did that in Crusader Kings 2, you would have all kinds of trouble, because there were rivalries without end, and there was trouble without end in your family if you did it like that. So there's of course two ways this worked in the real world. First, way it was also working like that in Crusader Kings 2. I mean, wars between brothers and things like that were also common in the real world, but even more common in the later stages of this was the Habsburg practice. Once you found families that were doing that successfully and being part of that dynasty, that powerful family, gave you also some security, some safety of existence and income and power, then they played along. And that is coming in Crusader Kings 3, which is brilliant. This is based on tier, which means that a king will give you more renown than a duke and so on. Of course, that makes sense. Marrying in such a way that your dynasty ends up on the throne of a foreign realm is therefore useful, and even more useful than before, where you could only get some non-aggression pact or maybe an alliance if you were lucky for other reasons, than to just murder them until you inherit their lands. Yeah, I mean, there were alliances, but yeah, that was one of the uses. In Crusader Kings 2, having your dynasty spread out will give you more renown and thus a more powerful dynasty overall. For example, if you're playing as the King of England, you will not gain renown from your landed vassal brother, but you will gain renown from your dynastic cousin ruling a duchy in the Holy Roman Empire, because that is beyond your current power. You'll also gain renown from marrying away your dynasty to be spouses of powerful rulers, symbolizing your newfound influence in their realms. This gives you a reason to carefully plan the marriages of your kinsmen, even if you're not in need of an alliance. Yeah, not away with the daughters again. Now let's look at the legacies. The legacies that will define your dynasty. So what is a dynasty legacy? We all know that playing field in Crusader Kings is a very volatile one. You might be the emperor of the world as one character while being reduced to Count of Norfolk as the next. Yeah, that was also the thrill of playing it. And I'm experiencing it in my long-time roleplay Lords of the Fjords, where we basically had nearly all of Scandinavia. We were so close to founding the Scandinavian Empire, and then bam, all goes bust. And we just have a small kingdom in the east, not even really belonging to Scandinavia now, but just some very cold land. Basically near the nomads of the east that are very dangerous. So feels like going from the king of the world to the campfire back again. That is a certain thrill to it, but what is going on with the legacies connected to that? Dynasty legacies offer some permanence in this otherwise very wild world. So it's, as I said, a matter of safety, security, that was also very prevalent in the real world. If you were a member of the right dynasty, the right family, in the form of modifiers and unlocks that affect every member of your dynasty. Essentially, by using renown, you get to shape what your dynasty is known for. So that's another thing that is basically something you could get in Crusader Kings 2, but for example, if you got powerful artifacts, you could give these to your successor, and then they would gain the similar powers you had through these things, and that was a kind of inheritance that worked really well. And I expect this as being a similar influence, while of course being a different concept. This is bound to blood, the other thing was bound to possession. There's a myriad of legacies to choose from, all divided into tracks with an appropriately thematic name such as kin, guile, or blood. These aim to represent notions the world had or has about certain dynasties. For example, that the Seljuks are warriors, the Abbasids lawmakers, the Habsburgs diplomats, and prone to marrying their own kin, for example. Each legacy track contains 5 unlocks, each costing a progressively higher amount of renown to unlock. This reminds me of the old EU4 system of ideas, right? You have an idea tree, or you have an idea section, and then you unlock everything of it. And then that's it. But you can probably go and cross over here. As you can see, this is all dark. But something here is unlocked fully, like that of blood is unlocked fully. That of kin is unlocked a little bit, and the rest is dark. So you can combine that and you can add that up. That's very role-play-ish, and that's going to be very interesting, that influencing the strategy you have. So, in this div diary, we'll go into details on one of these tracks. So that's blood. That's the thing that is unlocked here fully, that you have unlocked the full medieval painting. I like that style. It's also the style of the Kingdom Come Deliverance thing, and yeah, it's just such a nice medieval style, or imagined medieval. I mean, the actual medieval paintings were often an art made by many people, with one guy specializing on faces, the other one on trees, and so on. But this looks really nice. It's a nice style. Blood, which also happens to be my favorite. Who is writing this? Rager. This track, so they are called tracks, is designed for those of you who enjoy breeding traits into your family line. The first few unlocks, all focusing on increasing the chance of inheritance, emergence, and reinforcement of genetic traits. So, we'll go deeper on genetic traits and the roleplay connected to them in Crusader Kings 3, and that there's a special thing about this coming in another dev diary. In Crusader Kings 2, you had often hidden genetic traits like longevity, fertility. I mean, you had these visible traits, but there were also hidden traits that were mostly connected to some kind of balancing point score. So if you would have someone very fertile and very quickly progressing and very resistant to disease, but maybe on the other hand very prone to dying early, so very low life expectancy, for balance, and that was all hidden. This is, as it sounds, not hidden anymore, and you can actively go for it. Like if you want to have a really nice chin, for example, then you can go and breed members of the chin, because Henrik Ferreras has said that you will see these genetic traits also. You will see like the general character, and you will see the genetic traits. You can have the Habsburg chin. Finally, you won't be able to talk really nicely anymore, and things like that. So the last few unlocks will reduce the chance of negative traits appearing, essentially allowing for more risky marriages, giving you the chance to choose a genetic trait to be more common among your kin. For example, beautiful, intelligent, and strong, but also giant or dwarf. You could have a dynasty of heavenly giants. Finally your Egyptian empire dream becomes reality, right? No matter how much I pleaded with art, I couldn't get a Habsburg chin trait. Oh. Finally rounding off with an increase to your dynasty members' life expectancy, which increases both their average age and average fertility. This even means that women of your dynasty remain able to bear children for longer. Wow. That's near supernatural power, but it makes sense. It makes sense. So you can have that the people of old really did actively, and why we got so many, well, house pets and incredible cows and things like that. Breeding was really a hobby. and also for your own family. Not only a hobby, but something they were very much into. Skin in the game, very literally. If I speak to my grandfather, who is now nearing the 100 years, this was really prevalent in also like families back then. They would say, yeah, you know, and then this guy married this one, in the my great grandfather married this one, and then all of a sudden all of our family had bad teeth. That was a mistake. So there's really some thought of that, some very old thought, as being like the successors of some relationship will have to suffer from the mistakes of their predecessors, or will enjoy what they did genetically. That's the skill in the game. So these legacies, though, take a long time to unlock, of course, as they are so powerful and so impactful. You cannot give them out free, and you will have to work hard toward unlocking even one full track, though their power more than makes up for the wait. Legacies are chosen and unlocked by the dynast, so make sure that you're in control of your dynasty, or what will happen then. If you're not, it could be spread out, knowing the AI. It could, all kinds of different things could go on. You want to make a line of erudites, but instead they're all warriors. Well then, you have to rebel against it. You'll have to rebel against it. So your fight for being the head of a dynasty is also a fight for the future of it. The future kings and the future direction your kings will take. While in Crusader Kings 2 you could have one king like being a warrior, the next king was the total erudite, the next king was this, the next king was that. There could be really big differences, while this points into a direction. So I'm looking forward to the next dev diary, where there will be a sneak preview of the map. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've tried to go as deep as my knowledge allows it. Also of Crusader Kings 2, there's many more interesting things to say about this, and yeah, I'm looking really forward to Crusader Kings 3. I'll, as I've said, I'll try to cover every dev diary from now on, due to some things among that work. I've missed to report on the first things about PDXCON and Dev Diary 0. Well, I think you might have, if you're interested in Crusader Kings 3, you might have seen all of that enough. So I've concentrated on this one, which is very interesting already, and we'll go on to the second dev diary and maybe some things extra on the side in the future together. Have a great time until next time, and happy gaming. This is Immanuel signing out. Happy gaming to you.